Hello guys, my name is Diego Pacheco and this is another Java video. So today we're gonna talk about a new project. We're gonna see some hands-on, some live demos, some POC I made to show it's working. We're gonna talk about Hibernate Reactive. So this is a new project that popped up. It still is on beta, is beta 1. And first of all, I want to say a disclaimer, right? I personally don't believe much in ORM. I think that ship has sailed. I really don't believe in ORM or JPA. I don't think that's the ideal solutions. So definitely, there are better mappers nowadays, directly to specific data store solutions like Cassandra has a good mapper. Spring Data, Lattice has good mappers as well. And you don't need ORM, right? You need simple mapping. Even JDBC, a good JDBC template in Spring, you should be fine. But let's say your application is already using Hibernate. Being reactive is actually interesting, so you might get better performance. So this is really not production ready code, right? I would not run in production yet. It's still like the performance is still to be proved, especially for Hibernate, right? But this is good news actually, right? This is improving. And what I want to show you guys today is actually run Hibernate with Spring Boot 2 and kind of connect the two things together. So let's get started. So basically, I have a project here, and in this project we're gonna see using MySQL, right, and Hibernate Reactive, and also Spring Boot 2, Spring Boot 2.4. So there's a couple of things here. So I have a script to run MySQL in Docker, right? So this will run MySQL 5.7 in Docker. So first thing I'm gonna do is actually run this script, run MySQL Docker, right? So this is oh sorry, I think I have running it here. Yes, I do. So let me actually kill this one, Docker rm, and also Docker stop and Docker rm. So let's get rid of this guy. Awesome. So now let me run again. Okay, there we go. Now I have my container running here. In my script, I am nice, so I already show how to connect on the database, right? So this might take some time to the container to be active, right? But there we go, it's working. So as you can see, I'm connected on my MySQL client. Great. Now I have another script I create here to create schema. To create a database. So I basically running create database. I'm calling HibernateDB, and I am piping that to the MySQL client. So let's run that. Create database. And if we run again, you're gonna see that we cannot create database because it already exists. So one thing we can do, we can test the MySQL client again, right? And then we can do show databases. Then we can see there is HibernateDB, so we can do use Hibernate DB. And then we can do show tables. We should have nothing here. Yes. But Hibernate will generate this for us. So we're going to stay here for now. So now let's go to the project. All right, so it's a Maven project. So I'm going to open idea here. And we're going to continue from there. So we have a bunch of things here. So let's go piece by piece. All right, I try to make a minimal application. But this is a bit more... I had to do a bit more work in order to make this possible, right? But let's start with the pom.xml. So since this is a Spring Boot 2 app, right? You're gonna have the typical Spring Boot things here, like the starter parent, and I'm using right now is the latest version 2.4.0. and then I'm using Webflux, so I'm not running on Tomcat, I'm running on Netty. And then I have the dependencies for test in Spring. And here's what matters, right? So I have Hibernate Reactive, as you can see, is beta 1, right? So we have this dependency. You need to watch because right now Vertex latest version I think is 4.4.0.0, but this one's actually not using 4 yet, is using 3.9.4, so I had to watch for some conflicts, and I had to figure that out. So we need Vertex Core 3.9.4. We have Vertex MySQL client and Vertex JDBC client. And then we have the latest MySQL driver type 4 for Java in MySQL. Then I have the Hibernate Entity Manager. And I also have Spring ORM here. And then some other dependencies for testing and Spring. So that are the dependencies. There is this nice dependency analyzer Maven plugin for IntelliJ, where you can check for conflicts. If you put here and there's nothing here, your dependencies are all good. So this plugin is really, really gold. So that are the dependencies. Now we can take a look in the code and also the configuration. So let's start with the configuration, right? So in resources metainf, there's the classical persistence.xml. So what we have here, right, is the classical persistent unity, right? So I'm using resource local as transaction type, and this is the important type. Your provider needs to be a different provider, right? So I'm using reactive persistence provider, right? So which is Hibernate Reactive. Then the rest is pretty much the same. So we have like the driver, the URL, the user, the password, what's the default schema. So I configure to use on my container here. And also the dialect, which is MySQL 5.7. We want to show SQL, we want to format SQL. And also I use this property here for this POC and development is also good. So we have this schema generation database create. So it will create a schema for us all the time, so we don't need to worry about that. And we also have the create database schemas and validation none, all right? So that's the persistence unity. Now, let's take a look on our module, right? So I created something I call a thing, right? Because a thing could be anything. Could be humans, could be animals, could be whatever, right? So a thing has a long ID and a string name. So I'm using JavaX annotation, so it's an entity, and also adding this as XML root element. So this might be serialized to XML, and you're gonna see that on the API later on. And then the named query I defined, all right, using standards is Sting, which is the name of the entity. And then the method is find all. And my find all is select T from Ting T. So basically getting all attributes from Ting in my Hibernate query language, HQL. Then on the get ID, we're setting the this ID, and it's also a generated value, and the strategy is sequence, and the generator I want to create I call Ting sec, right? And then regular get and setter, then gets and setter for name, and finally a toString, which will be useful for us to see what data we are getting in and out. So very, very simple entity. Hibernate, reactive Hibernate, it works with complicated mappings like one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many. All that is available. But for sake of simplicity, I just made one entity with no relationship, all right? Then now let's take a look on our configuration. So we have to configure some beans because we would not inject the standard JPA classes, but actually we need some specific Hibernate reactive Hibernate classes, because right now the JPA spec is not reactive, right? So there's no way, we could leverage on the spec to do that. So we need some things. We need a local session factory being a data source, a platform transaction manager, and some properties. So some properties here are going to pass some Hibernate properties for sake of development and POC. I also want to ask to create. This will be similar to the persistent unit, all right? So I'm setting the dialect. For the transaction, I'm just creating a Hibernate transaction manager and setting the session factory there. For the session factory, just creating a local session factory bean, pointing to my data source, which similar what you saw. These are my SQL data source, what you saw on the persistence unity. And then finally, I just need to set the package where I have my entities, in my case, all in the model folder, in the properties, and that's it. It's important to enable at configuration at enable transaction, right? And that are the configs we need. Now, let's take a look how we run the application. So there is this application classical Spring Boot class where you have a Spring Boot application at enable auto configuration and component scanning all my packages. Then I have a bean transactional. So once this app up and running, I want to run this command runner. And what I want to do is call my DAO. So as you can see, I'm injecting my thing DAO. And I want to create a thing called Diego. So I want to create data when the application starts. So that's it. Now, let's take a look at my controller. So in my controller, I have two things here, right? So this is a REST controller. And I'm injecting AutoWire my DAO. And I basically have two operations. I have one operation slash, so index, where you're going to get greetings from Spring Boot Hibernate Reactive thing. And I'm going to call my thing with the ID 1, which is Diego. And this is going to be a string. But since I'm using Webflux, right, and this is reactive programming, in Spring you can do reactive programming all the way down. I wanted to make a disclaimer here. This is awesome for performance, but this really sucks for coupling, all right? Because then you're coupling with Spring and Mono, and you need to have Spring on the server on the client. So for coupling, that's really, really, really bad idea. I don't think like a generic SOA service should be doing this way, but maybe some specific application with client and server under the hood, this will be totally fine, right? But here we want to go reactive all the way down. So I'm trying to do some juggling and connect Hibernate Reactive with Spring Reactive, and I'm using futures to kind of make that tunnel to happen. So here, as you can see, I have a mono, which is the reactive way in Project Reactor and Spring Webflux. And when you have one thing is a mono, when you have multiple things is a flux. So here I'm saying I'm gonna return a mono of a thing, and then I get a mono thing, and ID1, right? Later on, I also have a client. We're gonna take a look on that. So now let's take a look on the DAO, which is the interesting part, right? This is the most interesting part. So on my DAO, I have some imports I don't need here. Let me clean it up. Basically, what we need is to auto-wire the session factory, right? We need the session factory because that's a Hibernate specific thing. And like I said, right now, reactive Hibernate is in beta 1. And, this is not part of the JPA spec. I think the spec will catch up eventually, but that's what we need to do in order to access this. So I have two methods, create things and get things. So create thing needs to be in a transactional boundary. So that's why I have add transaction here. Then I create a new thing, set the name, and set the ID as 1. So this is pretty bad, setting the ID hard-coded, right? But it's totally fine, right, for what we're doing here. And then I just do session factory, get current session, and save. And then I pass my thing. And then I flush it because I want this on the database right away. And that's it. So if you remember, this will be called on the beginning by the application, right? So here, when the application boots up, we're going to call the DAO create thing. Okay. But now, let's go back to the deal. Now is the cool part, right? So I have two methods for the cool part. So I have the get thing, which returns a thing. So this is going to be partial reactive, right? So what we need to do is to create a entity manager factory. And then we're going to do persistence.created manager factory, the name of persistence unit. This needs to match whatever you have in your persistence.xml. And if you can see here, is a thing PU, right? Thing persistent unit. This is matching here. And then I create I do one wrap, and there's two things you can do. You can do stage and you can do multi-unity. I'm gonna do multi-unity. And then you pass the class, right? And then you have a multi-unity session factor, or you could have a stage session factor. This will difference the way how your methods in Hibernate Reactive work, right? Once you have that, then you can open the session, all right? And then either you're gonna have a stage session, multi session, right? And then what happens now, you can have fun, and you can call a bunch of things like find, delete. You can create dynamic queries, pretty much the classical Hibernate criteria in the Hibernate API. So here I'm finding a thing by ID, wherever ID I receive here. And then because I did the multi session, you know, I have invoke. If I did stage, the methods will be different. And then in invoke, you can do some coding. So I'm gonna receive a thing after the find happens. This is all reactive now. And I'm checking, okay, if this thing is not null, I wanna print it. And here I'm breaking the reactivity, because I'm saying I want to wait indefinitely. When you say await, you can say, okay, as optional or at most and pass some duration, say, okay, I'm going to want to wait 2 seconds. But here I'm pretty much blocking and breaking the module, right? So it becomes blocking again. So in reactive programming, right, the fun is basically make it reactive all the way, right? That's where you have more benefit. But here, for sake of a demo, I'm blocking because I want to show this working. So here we're just printing, okay, whatever my name is, thing name is a nice person. Will be Diego. Diego is a nice person. And here we are creating a query, right? So we are doing select ID name from thing, where the name is desk. And then we are getting a result, right? Which will be a uni list of things. And then we do invoke, and then for each item here in the database, we would print the POJUs, right? And then we would await forever. So we're blocking here again, right? Then I'm gonna return a thing. So because here I'm doing this just to show you guys reactive Hibernate API, right? Some of the things you could do, and then. Here I actually gonna return a thing. So I do session.find, passing thing class and ID, and then I also blocking here. All right. But now I'm gonna show how we do that without kind of a blocking. I think it doesn't block it because these things are a bit tricky. I didn't debug or look the whole code to check, but in theory it shouldn't be blocking. So if you remember my controller, I had two operations, right? The index and the /mono. And the mono, I have a thing, a mono thing, right? And I have this other operation, mono thing. And that's what we're gonna take a look now, right? So this one is more interesting. So what I'm doing here, again, the same thing. I'm getting an entity manager factory. Then I get a multi session factor. Then I open and I have a multi session. Then look what we're doing. Then we're doing mono from future. So mono is a spring, so we want to create a mono based on a future. So then we're doing Hibernate Reactive, doing a find, and we're doing a subscribe. And we want this as a completion stage, which will be a completable future. And from future expects a completable future, right? So we are piping things, and that's what we're doing here, connecting the reactive Hibernate with the reactive part of Spring. And like I said, I did the debug all the way down to see if there's no blocking in some place, right, like here. But in theory, they should be connecting the two things via future, right, and non-blocking. But it's definitely more elegant than doing a wait indefinitely, right? So now let's run this thing. And I also want to show that, this can be called by a client, right? So let's keep the application here. And I have a reactive client, right, which we're going to run. There's a specific test I wrote. Let's do some cleanup on this API here. So this is a test using Spring Boot, right, testing capabilities with JUnit 5. So that's why we see extends with. If it was JUnit 4, will be run with. And then we're using Spring extension, and then we want a testing environment, all right? So this will boot up the server using the application class, and also we'll assign a handle port, and we are getting that port here. Then we have a test where we can create a web client, and we can say the web client is localhost and wherever the handle port is. And then with that web client, we can try to get, and this is the URL where we get a mono. So we are being reactive, right, using mono. And then we can do a retrieve, and then we can be body to mono, all right? So on the body, we would have XML. And then I am subscribing just to print that. Then here I'm explicitly blocking, all right, because I want to show the result right now. And this is a test, so it's fine to block. Then I'm showing the result it is, and I'm just verifying if this is not null, right? So let's run the application first of all. So as you can see here, the application is running, and also says that it's inserted a record on the database. As you can see, we are using Spring Boot 2.4, right? So now if we go back to my database, and if you do show tables, right now we have tables here. So we can do select asterisk from thing, and we can see we have records on the database in MySQL. Awesome. So now let's take a look on the browser, right? So if we hit localhost, this will hit the index, right? And as you can see here, we have greetings from Spring Boot and Hibernate Reactive thing, and then this is the toString of my thing, which is ID1, and that's me. And on the console, we can see logging the Hibernate queries here, right, which is great, as expected. Now, one thing we also can do is hit the other endpoint, which is the mono, right? And then once you read the mono, you can see the XML I was talking about, right? Because that's how we construct our Pojo. Now I can show you the client. So let me stop this, otherwise we're gonna have issues, right? And now I have a completely reactive client. So here in theory, we are reactive all the way down, right? So we have a reactive client with a web client in Spring, calling a reactive netty with Spring Boot Web Flux, and then that is going reactive on the database with Hibernate Reactive as well, right? So let's run this guy, right, and see what happens. So as you can see, all tests are passing. And if we take a look on the logs, we can see that it boot up Spring, all right? It also insert the record as we expected. And we can see here some other prints. This is our test, right? So you can see the first print and we can see the second print. So it's fully working. So that's it, guys. Remember, do not abuse from ORM, all right? This is a demo, don't use in production, but I think we're definitely gonna see improvements on this direction, and this is all good. So that's it. I hope you guys like it. See you next time. Take care. Cheers.